Hi, everyone. Welcome to this special transmission. I have a very special guest with me tonight or today, depending on which time zone you are located at. His name is Brien Foerster. I do believe he needs no introduction because I'm quite sure that most of you who are watching this transmission have already heard about him, know his work. Nevertheless, I just want to say a couple of words about him. Brien Foerster is someone that has a remarkable trajectory in ancient civilizations research, approaching to that research from a scientific view, as well as on Paracas school, which is mostly what he's known for, along with the ancient technology. He has been as I was saying, a remarkable trajectory. So thank you for everything that you're doing, Brien. And well, welcome here. Thank you for being present with us today, tonight. And we have a lot to talk about. I was telling you behind stage how I got to know you for the first time. And I was sharing with Brien that before coming to Mexico after 4 years living in Egypt, just before taking the plane, I was scrolling in YouTube and I saw a video of him on precisely the Paracas schools. And when I watched I resonated so much with that video and the information that he was sharing and the way he shared it that ever since I have been tuning into his work, and now, um, 4 years, no, 3 years, about 3 years later, here we are. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, Brien, tell us, what did you begin with? The ancient technology, the Paracas schools? How did you enter into this field of discovering all these mysteries of human history and ancient stages of human evolution?
It started when I was a child with a fascination, excuse me, for mysterious places. So when I was growing up, my family had a subscription to National Geographic. And especially when there were articles about ancient Egypt, I was completely fascinated. So that's really how it began. So I guess, yeah, my fascination for ancient places and enigmatic places and megalithic places. When I was 16, I got to see Stonehenge for the first time before there was even a fence around it. So you could actually go right up to the stones and touch them. And ever since then, I've been able to travel to about 100 countries around the world. Not all about ancient places. Some of it was about my own ancestry that I wanted to explore. But I've been studying megalithic sites for probably about 20 years so far, and been very fortunate to be able to see most of the mysterious megalithic sites around the world.
Well, I heard that you mentioned Pumapunku, which is one of the places that I have been drawn the most. I haven't been there yet, but when I initiated this path of remembrance, the first thing that I started doing was looking for all these ancient sites, which one of them would call more my attention, and Pumapunku was one of them. And it's one of the most mysterious places, as you refer to it, right? Why would you say so? Why one of the most mysterious places that you have been so far?
Because the level of precision of technology that was used at Pumapunku and Tiwanaku is on some level beyond what we have today. So there is no way that the so-called Tiwanaku people who lived there from about 100 AD to 1000 AD were able to construct it because they simply had bronze tools. And you can't cut hard stone with bronze tools. So obviously there was a much older civilization that existed before them who were responsible for the original construction. And then later, when the Tiwanaku people moved into the location, they adopted the site and transformed it into what they wanted to do with it. So, yeah, I think it's clearly one of the most mysterious places on Earth.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And actually, I wanted to tell you because you were talking about the H, the
Mhm.
structures in the shape of an H. I normally relate every structure, ancient structure that we see, I relate it to at a biological scale. For instance, the pyramids to our pyramidal neuronal network, to the very specific DNA structures that create pyramidal figures, because for me, at a quantum level, everything is interconnected. So I was tuning into those H figure structures, and they resemble to the process of the mitochondria, the microtubules of the cell. I'm sorry, the microtubules of the cell. They're also in the mitochondria when they are creating that exchange of information. And that's one correlation. And the other one is that there are some H cells that are used to separate specific components. I don't know if you have heard about them. They create an H-shaped figure. They put two components, and then they put a membrane in the center, and then it has the shape of an H, you know? So, uh, of course, as we see the Ankh and how now they are devices that are trying to recreate over the very same Tesla that, that was somehow connected through the space memory network to this information and translated into his science. I do believe that at some point, all those devices that we now see, roughly see, are, somehow trying to bring the purpose that those megalithic structures had at some point into this reality, and of course, at a way lower scale. So, yeah, I just wanted
Ah,
to mention that because I know how passionate you are about Pumapunku. I perceive the same level of passion when you go to these places, and I do. I also feel very passionate about it. So yeah, I wanted to brought this up. And I have a question. You mentioned some pyramids there, not in Pumapunku itself, but also in Peru. Is that so?
There are many pyramids in Peru, but all of them are made out of adobe mud bricks, and they're mainly on the coast. So it's in the interior, in the highlands around Cusco, where you find the megalithic stone structures. But on the coast, there were hundreds and hundreds of pyramids that were built by ancient civilizations, but all out of simple local material, not out of anything that was technically precise.
Okay. So I now, in relation to the stars, because we know that some of the pyramids, well, all of the pyramids are aligned to very specific star systems like Orion, Pleiades, and so forth. In the case of the megalithic ancient structures in Peru, would you say that they are related? I know that you related them to the Chacana, like the beautiful one that you have behind you, which is genius. I see, seeing that it's a map, like showing the very specific pattern of these ancient sites.
Mhm.
Have you tuned into if they are also aligned to very specific star systems?
Actually, the interesting thing about all the megalithic sites in Peru is they're all located on a line, very close to one single band that goes from the northwest to the southeast. So from the coast of Peru and Ecuador down through Bolivia and then starting to enter Chile. So it's called the Path of Viracocha.
Hmm.
So yeah, they're all, if not on the line, they're all within, say, 5 or 10 kilometers of this one band of energy that goes from northwest to southeast.
Okay, okay. And why would they call it the Path of Viracocha? I know Viracocha was the one of the main deities, right? Is that so?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to name it after a very important figure for them, or is there another message?
There's another message to it because Viracocha or Viracocha was the creator god of the Andean people, but he also supposedly sent human representatives called the Wiricochan who traveled and taught science and art and agriculture to the people they encountered. And they traveled from the southeast up to the northwest. And when they reached the ocean at the border of Peru and Ecuador, they supposedly uh, climbed on board a ship and left, supposedly stating that they would come back. But that's an excuse that the Spanish conquistadors used when they invaded Peru. They said they basically tried to tell the local people that they were the return of the Huitocochan. I don't think the local people believed them, but it's an excuse the Spanish used in order to be able to make themselves appear to be far more superior to the local people.
Hmm. It's very interesting that you say that because actually last weekend I was in an ancient site, and the people now in Mexico have adopted a festivity. They call it the Chinelo, which is this big human figures, which they call the Spanish, and as a representation when they came to invade Mexico. The thing is that the headdresses of those figures are not like at all to the ones that the Spanish used to wear in those times. They
Hmm.
wear big headdresses like the ones that the Sumerians would use, or
Oh.
even like the headdress of Nefertiti. And the interesting thing, like even more, is that some artifacts that we have been found, ancient artifacts here all over Mexico, are becoming more and more and more famous. Some of them fraud, some of them original, have depictions of Sumerians, Egyptians, with, and even I saw one which I wasn't allowed to show yet for respect of the community. They don't want to show it to public for
Mhm.
very specific reasons. But it's a tablet made of jade with two figures, feminine figures, as Nefertiti, with the very same headdress, made of
Wow.
jade and Quetzalcoatl
Mhm.
around, and many other things, many other codes. But then you see that it also is in resonance to what you are mentioning now. that, and what I have been also tuning into, and based on my research and memories, that the Spanish used this to make believe that they were the so-called gods and they had came back, you know? So, but again, here in Mexico, the Mixtecas and Aztecs fought very hard
Oh yeah.
when the Spanish came. So they didn't relive it. Perhaps other tribes that came to in alliance with them, perhaps they did, but yeah, the Aztecs didn't for sure.
Right.
Yeah, yes. Also, another thing, speaking of Mexico, you were mentioning that when you came here, the like there I saw that you were in Teotihuacan, the city of the gods, and you were
Hmm.
referring to the steps of the pyramid of Quetzalcoatl or the temple of Quetzalcoatl, basalt
Hmm.
and very steep ones, like that's a feature that you pointed out to.
Right. Well, it clearly appears that the temple of Quetzalcoatl is much older than the temple of the sun and the moon because it appears to have been originally built as a megalithic site. As you mentioned, the staircases, the stairs perfectly fit together without any clay or mortar or cement or anything like that. And then everything on top of that is a much rougher construction. So there are quite a few sites in Mexico that appear to be thousands of years older than any of the civilizations that we know of, and then were later adopted by the cultures that we speak about, like the Maya, the Aztec, the Zapotec, etc.
Yes. What do you think? I agree. And what do you think about the structure of the pyramid, of the moon and the sun, that originally it was mostly covered with cinnabar, the red powder mercury, with
Hmm.
mica. They have discovered mica under,
Hmm.
and also very interesting spheres made of pyrite, as well as the
Ah,
liquid mercury. Yeah, yeah,
right.
underground. So, would you say all that structure was created before the Aztecs came? The Mayan were also in Teotihuacan, by the way. So they were. Would you say that they came after, and all that structure was created by those gods, and that's why they call it the city of the gods, or the translation that they give it to that place?
Right, or where men became gods. So yeah, I definitely think the whole complex is much older than any of the cultures that we know about. And supposedly, the mica that was found could very well have come from Brazil. So it's not a local material, and it was found in giant sheets, which is very difficult to obtain. So, yeah, Teotihuacan is a very mysterious site. There's also an amazing little place called Mitla, which is in
Mm,
Oaxaca, and
mm,
it's definitely a megalithic site because we found the site is in ruins now, but we found some very large pieces of basalt or basalt stone weighing 6 ton, 10 tons, and up to 18 tons. That's a single piece of stone. The quarry is about 2 miles away. So, how that stone of that size was cut and transported to that location is a complete mystery. But Mitla is one of the most fascinating places I've ever been to.
mm. I was there a couple of years ago. Most
Ah,
likely we'll go back soon. Yeah. There is another place in Chiapas that the name is Chilcuntic, and it's very close to San Cristobal de las Casas. And there are a lot of megaliths there,
oh,
but they are, like piled, like they were, well, they
right.
are already covered, by the grass and the weed, and but there are other remainings that were used as the base for the further constructions, as you are saying. So perhaps you at some point would like to go there, because if that it's close to Oaxaca, actually. So perhaps
Hmm.
there is a circuit of monoliths in all that area, you know?
Yeah, that could very well be. Well, the common practice of any culture that moves into an area of older construction is they do recycle the material. And like you said, it's very common for the foundations to be made out of megalithic blocks if they exist. That's what the people at Pumapunk. That's what the people at Pumapunku did. They recycled the stone and then built on top of it. And you see that in terms of what the Inca did in Peru, what the dynastic Egyptians did in Egypt, many different, almost any megalithic site you can mention. The famous culture that we think of as the original builders were later people who recycled the material.
Yes. If that happens nowadays, when I go to Egypt, I have many friends in the Coptic area as well.
Ah,
And you can find even blocks of temples, in very old parts of downtown of that Coptic area. So yeah,
ah,
they currently do that. And speaking about Egypt and stones and rocks, I don't know if you have been. You see that you have the Muslim cemetery in the
mhm,
YssaH plateau inside the area. Behind
right.
there is a mountain, and that mountain they don't allow you to go there, as you know. You can, but in a very specific way. So the times that I have been there is something very important down there. I was even talking about, I know that it's a friend in common, YssaH one, you know,
Hmm.
that for the ones that don't know, it's a family that his father, Hakim I was the first one to actually take into consideration that quantum perspective, energetic perspective of the pyramids, not being tombs. So
Right.
anyway, so this mountain has a type of mica. Like when it rains, the crystal is so soft now as the sand that chunks of crystals come out due to the water and
Hmm.
can take that chunk. And there are very specific types of crystals. One of them is very similar to the mica, so that's
Hmm.
something very, very interesting because as far as I know, there wouldn't be mica sources for mica in Egypt. Did you?
No, that's a good point. Also, the city of Cusco, which of course was the Inca capital, was originally a megalithic city that was built several years before the Inca ever arrived. And whoever the megalithic builders were, they selected the stone, which again is a type of basalt or basalt, from one specific quarry. And that basalt is very high in mica content as well. And of course, in modern times, mica is used in electronics and things like that. So clearly, that stone was selected on purpose because of its hardness and also high concentration of mica for energy transmission of some kind.
Yeah, exactly. Superconductor, and also it resists high amounts of heat.
Oh.
Yes, yes. So they even use it for the space rockets, all that part of the rockets that is it's directly facing the fire so that it
Mm-hmm.
won't melt. So yeah, that's also another use for the mica. So
Ah.
yeah, yeah. When I saw that chunks were coming, I was wondering how natural is that? Because it's placed there. If like
Mm-hmm.
if at some point all the piles of mica had been placed there, covered by the sand, and then geologically, its geological nature created a very specific interaction in between crystals that come together cohesively, But then
Mhm.
again, it's not super condensed, you know, it with water it dissolves. So
Oh,
yeah. Um, anyway, so this mica mount, you know,
mhm.
it's very interesting, and I there are stories that there are a lot of things underground, as we
Oh
know.
yeah.
There is a lot of things going. There is a lot going on underground in Giza Plateau and in all ancient sites. So speaking of which, what do you think about the latest discovery, like official discovery that was thrown out publicly about the SAR scan that was done to the second pyramid?
I don't think it's real. I think there's a thing called a signal, which is the actual transmission, and then there's noise, which is background like chatter. So I think they're really pushing uh, the actual. There isn't enough data, and also their information has not been peer reviewed. So I'm very suspicious about what they think they found. Once they do much more research, also, I believe that technology is not capable of penetrating the ground like ground penetrating radar can do. So I don't have a lot of faith in what they think that they've discovered so far. But I'm open-minded to it.
Sure. So based on your experience, because I know that you have gone under some of the underground shafts and the Osiris shaft, the so-called Osiris shaft. We know that all of that is a network, interconnected network.
Right.
So you mentioned that in some of the funny sarcophags boxes, in some of the boxes in the Osiris shaft, you found some black goo and you got to get a sample. Could you do
Yeah, we
a
did.
test?
Yeah, that was analyzed in Canada in a laboratory. It turned out to be a petroleum product. So it's actually quite recent. It's part of when they were doing the initial excavation, they brought some machines into the Osiris shaft in order to lift the lids off the boxes and things. And I think it was simply a petroleum product that was used as a lubricant of some kind. So it's not, you know, bitumen was used in ancient times in mummification, but I don't think the sample that we had analyzed was ancient at all, unfortunately.
Okay, okay. Well, that's good to know. But yeah, this is what I love, you know, what you when you really don't just are based on assumptions. You go into that scientific field to get ground salt, like solid rock proofs, you know, which I
Right.
do believe it's very important because I'm quite sure that you have faced all kind of um, ideas, speculations through what you do in the Paracas schools.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important to have, you know, like all that background. And just before going to the Paracas school and, you know, like the elongated schools, I love one of the things that I love that you're sharing is that possibility that there was this plasma ejection coming from the center of the galaxy and then
Mm-hmm.
expanding all the way into the earth and then melting a lot of the things or creating, you know, like this disruption.
Right.
Uh, yeah, what can you tell us about that?
Well, I think there are different theories about this, but approximately every 13,000 years, there's a cycle of cataclysmic events that happen on the planet. The last one was between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago. And it occurred at different times. It wasn't like a one-day event. It occurred at different times in different locations. So, for example, at the site of Karnak in Egypt, the oldest part, which is the center of Karnak, where the central avenue is called the Holy of Holies, or the Path of the Holy of Holies. And there we see definite evidence of flash heating of the very hard stone, causing the stone to actually crumble and then sometimes melt. Delta, which looks like it literally exploded. So different locations in Egypt, we find evidence of the melting of stone surfaces. We also find that in sites in Peru. We've already mentioned Pumapunku, which again, some of the very hard stone appears to have been flash heated. So there are two theories about that. One of them is that it was an ejection of rapid heat from the sun, again, that happens every 13,000 years. And another theory by American physicist Paul Laviolette is that our center of our galaxy is a black hole, which actually fills up every 13,000 years and then is forced to emit its energy. So if that was the case, then that energy would have gone across the galactic plane towards our solar system, or yeah, the black hole's in the middle of the galaxy. And so that is why the planet Venus is rotating backwards. The planet Uranus is rotating on its side. Our planet is 23.5 degrees off perfect alignment vertically. So I think our planet was hit by that energy causing the changing of the actual axis of the Earth. It's possible that that's happened many times, but again, it's this series of it's a cycle that happens every 13,000 years that causes this massive destruction.
Well, would you relate it because as we are talking about numbers, and there is a 26,000 years cycle related to the photonic belt of Alcyon, which the Mayans also refer to in their calendar, which I have seen that you even relate them all the way to the Olmecs. But like
Mhm.
based on those tablets that have been found, the glyphs in Guatemala actually was the most recent one.
Mm,
Um, they talk about what then was translated as the end of the world in 2012, but they were
right.
talking about it was accurately 2011. And if we do the numbers based on that 30,000 years um, digit that you're giving,
Mhm.
there are 2,000 years of cycle throughout the photonic belt of Alcyon, and then 11,000 years cycle around outside of the photonic belt of Alcyon. So if we add up those 2,000 and those 11,000, we have the 13 around, rough numbers.
Right. Mhm.
But and we know all that movement that is because it's not only our solar system orbiting the Alcyon, the son of Alcyon, to say it somehow. It's also other solar systems, the interaction with all the planets that are going through their different orbits.
Mhm.
So this is what I was tuning into, and putting together based on the numbers that you said, which for me it could make sense. So what do you think about that? Would you think there could be a correlation?
I think definitely. I think yeah, the cataclysms are not just limited to our solar system, but probably because it's a 13,000 year cycle, it probably affected other constellations as well.
Okay, thank you. And what did I'm quite sure that you have seen all these traces of granite, like when something hits and breaks,
Mhm.
and thousands of pieces are thrown all over the area. That's
Mhm.
what we see with traces of granite in the Giza Plateau. Would you relate that to that very same or to another one? Because the pieces are like way in the surface. If it had been like really ancient, there would be like deeper. But we can see all those pieces. What do you relate to? the fact that there are traces of granite all over the area.
Well, again, I think it's all part of this cycle of destruction that happened between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago. We also know that the Sphinx is much older, probably, than the pyramids. And sites like Karnak are probably older than the pyramids too. So there have been, there's definite evidence of very advanced technology being utilized even before the construction of the pyramids at Giza. And as you said, there's a lot that's underground. There are tunnel systems that are underground. Abdel Hakim Arian, when he was very young, said that he entered a shaft at the site of Saqqara and entered a tunnel, which he traveled all the way to the Giza Plateau, where he climbed back out of it when he was quite a young man. We went there recently to the original location at Saqqara, and they poured concrete into the shaft that goes down. So the Egyptian government has been trying to hide a lot of this ancient evidence of a very advanced technological civilization from the very distant past. There's also, of course, the site at Saqqara called the Serapeum, where we find these giant boxes, some weighing up to 20 or to 100 tons, that are located underground. And they clearly were done with very advanced machining technology long before the time of the dynastic people.
Yeah, one of the places that I am mostly fascinated about is the Serapeum as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I find it fascinating in many ways. Uh, we could talk about that as well, but yeah, I like there are many topics to cover, but I agree what you say about those boxes containing, more than just balls,
Right.
skeletons, the energy, the energy boxes filled in with energy as the very same pyramids, the amount of resonance that they create, as you said, when you
Oh, yeah.
it's yeah, yeah, it's the purpose is much higher. But anyway, so speaking also about all these cataclysmic events and Egypt, I know that you mentioned two places that I have also been to. One is Avaris, which is also known for this place, Tanis.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's another name that it's known for, and Amarna.
Right.
So I do feel, and I do agree, like you go to Tanis, which is for the ones that don't know, there are like many. At some point, they even related to the first, a lot of connection to Ramses the second and Moses or Moshe to that place. But now we know
Mm-hmm.
that even Ramses the second and Moses are not fitting into the same uh, period, most likely. So, but what you were sharing about the soil, the
Right.
state of the soil, you know, which
Mm-hmm.
is, how would you refer to it?
Well, the so-called soil at Tanis, it's not really soil at all. It doesn't seem to have any nutrients left in it. So it literally looks like, appears that there was a massive explosion or the striking of a pulse of heat from the sun that vaporized any of the nutrients. Because when you walk on the surface, it's like walking on the moon. It's like you're walking on powder, you're not walking on real soil. Also, there are only like 5 or 10 plants that grow on the hill, which is the Tanis location, whereas it's surrounded by agriculture. So it's very strange that at that location you have basically nothing growing. And it's because, as I said, there's no nutrient left in what we would call the soil anymore. Definitely a great candidate for a massive heat pulse striking from the sun.
Do you think, or would you put in at the same level or to in a similar level the landscape of Amarna currently? Because when I go, it was swapped away, whether if they were the priests and so forth, I do feel that also something else happened related to technology. I heard that at some point they found, because we know how secretive they are about the bodies. I have asked friends that are renowned Egyptologists if they have found
Mhm.
bodies in Amarna. No answer, you know?
Oh,
And but I heard about someone, an archaeologist, who found around, well, a group of skeletons of young adults around 21 years, old men, and all presenting arthritis.
wow.
Of course, the relation that they are doing is because they were going through hard labor, so they were, um, they were developing arthritis, but we know that it doesn't happen that way, you know? It's
Right.
some it's no, it's not necessarily something progressive, or perhaps it's progressive in relation to a very specific kind of technology, you know?
Hmm.
But yeah, so yeah, I really wanted to ask you, what is your input? Do you think that also something could have happened in relation to that? Something dramatically changing the land, the soil, because it's it's very much different to the desert. When you go to Amarna, mainly in the area where the city of the children was, or Ahentaten.
Right. No, that's a good point. What we do know, like standard Egyptologists say that Akhenaten chose that location because it was virgin, that there was nothing there. But it's a megalithic site. Whoever was there several thousand years ago, they carved rooms into the bedrock, and you can go down staircases underground at Amarna. They're of course all locked from the public, but if you get the right person, caretaker, they can open up the metal doors and let you go inside. So he chose that because he knew it was a very ancient site back from the time of the Aten, which is at least 13,000 years ago. So he wanted to bring an ancient site back to life, which is what he attempted to do. And that's why the Amun priesthood destroyed him, because they didn't want this ancient knowledge, this ancient higher level of vibration and consciousness to come back.
Yes, yes, I agree that he was truly trying uh, to resolve all the distortion that had been generated by the priesthood, by the Amon priesthood,
Right.
and yeah, there were a lot of consequences. Even at some point, it is said that he was the last one in Egypt holding the Ark of the Covenant, bringing it from Elephantine Island. And even you can see like really big devices in Elephantine Island in Aswan,
Mm-hmm.
really big devices. His father was at some point in that area. You can see glyphs with his name. So then it was moved, and then yeah, this is what I do feel, and I also share it with some um, well, one of my colleagues, who is a very renowned quantum physicist, that it was that the Ark of the Covenant was taken with him, and then it was also protecting it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps that also created an impact in the land. There are many things to be resolved and brought to light in Amarna. Many,
Right.
many, many, many things. And I do believe that the story is in the tablets, the ones that are still there, but not reading them in a linear form, yet
Mm-hmm.
decoding them truly, like beyond the. But anyway, um, now that brings us to the elongated skulls.
Okay.
And you have done also a lot of videos and shared in your presentations about elongated skulls in, of course, Paracas, and also doing
Mhm.
correlations with the ones of the famous ones of Akhenaten and his family. So, what would you say are the three main, like, like compelling facts, or actually uncompelling facts that put that make a difference in between a human skull and a non-human skull? Like three factors or five that is compelling evidence.
Okay, the most important one is that all human beings or Homo sapiens sapiens have two suture lines, one coming across the forehead and then one connecting there and going backwards to what's called the occipital plate. So 100% of all Homo sapiens sapiens have that, but the oldest of the Paracas skulls, they do not have the sagittal suture at all. They only have one suture coming across this way. And you can tell even by turning the skull upside down, there's no trace inside of there ever having been a sagittal suture. Another feature is that the eye sockets are 25 to 30% larger than normal. And the third factor would be that the foramen magnum, which is where your spinal column enters the bottom of your skull, is 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch back from where it should be. So with us, it's at the balance point. It's right in the center of the underside of the skull, but the original Paracas is 2.5 centimeters to 1 inch back, and that is a genetic characteristic. So those are three genetic characteristics which separate the original Paracas from Homo sapiens sapiens. So I believe that they were a subspecies of human or humanoid.
Okay. And well, in the case of Egypt, we don't have like physical evidence, just the ones in the that were sculpted. Perhaps that's why nobody knows where the bodies of Amarna are. Perhaps. But
Well,
and you,
that's a good point.
yeah, I have friends that as I was telling you, that they're renowned Egyptologists that have been with Hawass in his like in his diggings.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of things that they have found and put away is impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Impressive. Like perhaps not even coming into the imagination of the things that have been found. But yeah, so but in the case that Peru, which is beautiful, that on to some extent they are showing those skulls, even they are relating them to something that it's not. But
Right.
you have the opportunity, I know, and I know that it has been a path of around 2 years or 3 years asking for permission so that you could actually access to the skulls and have samples of them. Is that so?
Yeah. Yeah, we did DNA testing of 23 skulls. And then when Nassim came to Peru on a tour, we were able to access two more. And we did DNA testing of two that he was able to get hold of. And the majority of the skulls, the maternal DNA was not South American native DNA. It was more related to skulls that have been found around the Black Sea and Caspian Sea area. They're almost a perfect match. So whoever the Paracas were, they were not originally Native American people. They were something else.
Hmm. Perhaps that's also why the Spanish, when they came, thought that they had an opportunity because those beings that came prior had like clear, like green eyes, blue eyes, whiter skin, lighter hair color. So,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
And for instance, besides the mitochondrial DNA that you have gotten all these tests from, you also mentioned that there was one that there was not even found any other type of DNA like this in Earth, like in any form of existence here in Earth.
Actually, those were the two that Nissim had tested, and I think he got 70 samples from the two of them. They did, there's a thing called GenBank, which contains all human known DNA. And so the nuclear DNA is what you get from your father, and there is only 1,000th the amount of material as there is the mitochondria. So it's very difficult to analyze that because DNA breaks down as soon as you die. So after 2,000 years, it's very difficult to get a proper sample. But he had samples tested, and it matched nothing known to be human.
Yeah.
So that's where the possible, alien connection comes in. But which I'm open to. I'm not saying that the Paracas were necessarily 100% of this earth. They could have come from somewhere else and then mixed with local people, uh, which they were capable of doing, which is quite miraculous. So that is a possibility.
Hmm. Yes. Well, in this field, it's very important to keep, like very cautious and grounded with all the
Mhm.
data that is coming. I fully comprehend where you're coming from, and thank you for doing that because that also gives people a lot of trust in your research, you know?
Ah,
So
mhm.
yes. And yeah, so yeah, those two samples, I remember saying him even saying that those have more like DNA more related to a banana than to a human, and
Right.
such in a joke way. But yes, you think and you feel that it's more important to connect with babies' skeletons because
Hmm.
then it's easier to prove because there is a lot of going with archaeology mainstream that they say that everything was crane deformation, like,
Right.
and that even the trepanations had another purpose. Some of them even related to ceremonial purposes. So
Right.
it's as you say, like everything that it's not comprehended, they turn it into a tomb or into
Hmm.
yeah, a temple, something religious. But
Right.
how many skeletons of babies have you found?
Of babies?
Well, yeah, like even a fetus you found, or like little children, you have found skeletons, like
Hmm.
how
Yeah,
many?
there's one. Well, so far, three that I've physically seen. One is in a very obscure little museum in Bolivia. I went there with an American doctor, and he looked at it, and then right next to it is the skeleton, full skeleton of about a 13-year-old female. And he said that the female and the baby, which is a 7 to 9 month old fetus, were probably mother and baby that died during childbirth. So there's that one. The skull is the size of the torso. There's another one in another small museum in Bolivia that I saw, where again the skull is the size of the torso, and so far one other one that I've seen as well. So those are either newborn or fetuses, and they have huge elongated skulls in proportion to the body, and so that's definitely evidence of examples of people or beings that were born with elongated heads.
Yes. And the importance of the place of the foramen magnum,
Oh yeah.
because with that size of skull and with such a small body in comparison, it wouldn't be feasible for you to keep up your head straight, you know?
Exactly.
Yes, and also you mentioned that they had their teeth grown.
Oh,
One
that's
of them.
another one. Yeah, that's another one. That's one that was probably 18 months old, and it had, it's called Waiki. It's located in another very small museum here in Peru, and it had molar teeth, which are, an 18-month-old shouldn't have molar teeth. So that's another genetic aberration that we've been looking at.
Okay, well, uh, that's very interesting. Very, very, very interesting. So with all of this information, where are you heading to? What?
Um, well, I don't think there are any other megalithic sites to explore. I've been to most of the major ones on the planet, so I do enjoy doing 2 tours of Peru a year, one in June, one in November. We also go to Pumapunku and Tiwanaku on each of those tours. I go to Egypt once a year, and it's now I'm not looking for major evidence. I'm looking for subtle evidence now, which always shows up. You can visit Pumapunku 60 times, and still each time you go, there's a nuance there of evidence that you learn. So there's always something new to learn at each one of these locations. In terms of the elongated skulls, I'm still connected with people in the field who are making new discoveries. So I'm still collecting, and I'm still fascinated by the elongated skulls as well. As you said, there's no evidence of physical of elongated skulls in Egypt. All we have are the depictions during the Amarna period of Akhenaten's daughters who obviously looked like they had elongated skulls. So it's a lifelong process. I'm just still very happy to be able to continue my studies here in Peru and Bolivia, Egypt, and other parts of the world.
Well, thank you for everything that you're doing, and I'm more than honored to um, host this interview to plant it more in other places. And yeah, I could keep on talking with you like about many topics. So perhaps at some point we have another opportunity. And
Sure.
is there any thoughts that you would share with you would like to share with the audience? Any words that you would like to share?
Mainly, I would just like people to have a look at my YouTube channel. I've got more than 4,000 videos now on my channel. So there's a lot of information of these different topics that we've been discussing. And so that's probably the best source of information about the things that I've learned. My books, I suppose, are valuable as well, but I think my YouTube videos, especially, some are short, some are long, but contain a lot or all of the information I've been able to collect so far.
Okay, well, you heard Brien. You can access to his YouTube channel. I will write the description below this video. And well, I just want to again thank you. And may all this information that has been coming out to the light for a while, it seems that it has reached the moment, the point in human evolution that we are actually now receptive to see that which has always been there. And now we are open to include it in our perception, in our form of thinking about our origins. And may all of this information come together and allow us to create a better reality, a better humanity as it is intended, having seen that which we can create from the ancient civilizations, wisdom, knowledge, whether if it is pre-cataclysmic, which, as you said, the tools are not very available at this moment, but now, it's like a way of inspiring ourselves to be, to go even further of what it has been taught to us by mainstream archaeology or mainstream schools, So, yes, here we are. Thank you. Thank you, Brien. Thank you, everyone. And until next time.